It's never easy for one developer to talk up the praises of another one, but in this case, it's pretty much impossible not to do that. Our next speaker has redefined what it means to be a real estate professional. Aside from his day job, which I'm going to talk a little bit about, he is leading a number of do-good organizations. He's on the Bay Area Council and its Economic Institute, the Committee on Jobs, the ULI, Fisher Center at Cal, Lambda Alpha, the Center for Creative Land Recycling. That's an interesting one, Mike. The American Heart Association, the American Red Cross, the City of Hope, and United Way. During this past year, I think I've seen his name in the paper about every week. In fact, it's kind of the point where I wonder why you're not just working for the Business Journal, Mike. Deals ranging from yet another office acquisition, major build-to-suits, joint ventures with some very prominent local developers, competing for high-profile sites in San Francisco, re-entitling some of the biggest sites in the Bay Area, whatever. Mike and his crew have been doing everything. So I think we're in for a real treat. Please welcome Mike Covarrubias.
That'll cost me. I was going to tell you that I'm all that stands between you and a drink, but he took my line, so be gentle. I have to say, when I got asked by Ken to work on this as a featured speaker, I said, what the hell does that mean? And he kind of said, well, get up there and tell people what's going on. And I said, well, how long? And he said, well, an hour. I said, oh my God, I can't do an hour. He said, okay, I'll break it up. I'll get somebody else. John Taylor. Really. Ford, Carter, Bush, CBO. Really, that's the guy you're balancing against me. So I went to high school. I didn't do that well, but nevertheless. And then the second thing is I'm following Denise. I have an explicit rule in the company never to follow Denise Pinkston, because you saw it's a tough act. So what I want to just get a quick sample of is how many of you have been on a trip business-related to places like Charlotte or even New York or places like Texas, northern country, western country, in a real estate environment? And the subject came up, so how's the market? And all of your friends who you know or don't know are going, it's okay. And then they go to you and say, well, how's the Bay Area? And what do? You go, oh, it's okay, because you don't want to make them feel bad, right? Well, that was sort of the subject of today, that it has been clear for a while that this island we happen to inhabit, called the Bay Area, driven by San Francisco and Silicon Valley, are truly, truly unique. And so I'm going to try to give you a little bit of an overview of what's going on nationwide and show you where the islands are. I'm going to show you a little bit about what the Bay Area looks like, and then I thought it would be, without being overly self-pointed, give you a few of the projects we've done very quick, just to give you a sample of this is the kind of stuff that has set San Francisco and Silicon Valley apart from the rest of the world. Nobody has this kind of activity, and then we can chat about it. So I'm going to go backwards here just a second. So this is the Central Business District office clock, and you can actually sort of read that. So on just CBD, as you can see, San Francisco stands at the top of the pack. That thing is called, if you can't read it, the peaking phase, which I believe is wrong, but they had to call it something. And below that, you can see the next quadrant to the left and down includes Austin, Seattle, Houston, Pittsburgh, God help me, I don't know how, Denver and Boston, and some pretty other interesting places. Then you get sort of to the death side of the chart, which is sort of not falling but bottoming still. And best I can tell, it's all of Florida. It's West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, but some other interesting cities, places you wouldn't say, wow, that place should be in the toilet. It's San Diego, Phoenix maybe, St. Louis, New York downtown, Chicago, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Columbus, Dallas, San Antonio, Washington, D.C. So it's an interesting perspective that everybody has targeted San Francisco as the place. And so here it is in the suburban world. So now you pick up Silicon Valley as well. So you've got Silicon Valley and Seattle, along with Houston, San Francisco, and Cambridge in the shining star category, I would call it. It slips down below, as you can see, the peninsula in the rising phase. And then over there on death row, I guess once again, Jacksonville, all of Florida, Atlanta, which I think is wrong, but I'm not sure, Miami, Charlotte, Chicago, and all the rest. So the overall clock is kind of what you hear. Everybody has targeted San Francisco. Every book you read, every report says the #1 investment market in the country is San Francisco, which kind of includes Bay Area, includes Silicon Valley. And it's in apartments, it's in office, it's in retail. All three categories, all #1. Scares the hell out of me, but that's what everybody says. So it is truly an island in that sense. Now, other places are coming above the waterline, like you can see here. We have huge debates when we do these kind of discussions at ULI about secondary cities, tertiary cities, and the like. And, will anybody ever invest in a tertiary city again? And the beauty of this business is there's nothing new. It just happens again. So always the first cities come back first. And secondly, the secondary cities come back. I think that's why they call them secondary. And then finally, you get around to the tertiary cities, and it happens, and it's happening today. Other cities around the country, like you see here, when we look at this in a year, this clock will have moved further to the good side. I don't think those ones at the top will be falling, because I think this recovery does have legs. So let's see. So let me give you a sense of us. We're a development company. We do most of the product types, but only in the Bay Area. So we are really lucky. We are here. So we've been able to go after a whole lot of different projects in 2009 and 10 when the world was ending. If you all remember that, for those of you who do metrics, the model for any development deal is an IRR, which is your internal rate of return analysis over a 3 to 5 year period. When we were looking at projects in 2010, our capital partner said, well, 5 years is really short. What's it look like if it takes you 7 years for this project to work? So it was really suicide watch. It was, capital was unwilling to take bets. So if you managed to get somebody to step up with money, you bought stuff really, really cheap. And then you prayed there'd be a recovery sometime in your life, maybe 5 years. And then the city of San Francisco and Silicon Valley both, I always described it one day as Silicon Valley one day, the giants arose, Google, Facebook, and Apple. They sort of yawned and said, I think I need to hire 6,000 people each. And that caused a ripple like has not been seen in a long time. Apple decided to take over Cupertino. Google decided to take over Mountain View. All the big giants awoke. For those of you who know Jay Paul's project that sits at Mountain View, it was empty for what seemed an eternity until last year, and then it was full. 1,000,008 square feet was full. So in the city, what happened was the social media companies took off. And it started with names that we didn't really know what they did, from Twitters and Zyngas and the like. And that momentum increased. Google expanded their space. So the city went wild. So here I'll give you, without too much over prompting, some of our deals. We actually, in the history of the company, we're about 35 people. We do a normal amount of deals every year. This year was nuts. 2012, we sold 3 million feet, we bought 1.5 million, and most of it was south of Market. We were able to buy this building on the left, one of the ugliest buildings in San Francisco, which is our favorite, the former AT&T building. Really, it should have been blown up. But what we decided, because we bought it so cheap, was that we could rehab it. We like rehab. So we did a new design where, as you can see on the right, there are pop-outs that increase the number of corners. It's actually 2 stories higher. We got entitlements to go up 2 floors and go out on the 4 corners. So we added 100,000 feet to the building. Got SOM to do a great design with the glass curtain wall. And while we were getting it ready to be built, the tenants woke up. We had a great tenant broker who brought us 2 giant leases. So we did 2 leases in the, not even starting the rehab yet, to Macy's.com and Riverbed. And because of that, we were 85% pre-leased. We went from, there's no money to do this, to someday somebody might sign a lease, to we leased it and pre-sold it at that stage to Boston Properties, the biggest REIT in the country. That all happened in about 1.5 years. So if that's not staggering to you because you're not in the business, that is ridiculously staggering metric. It doesn't happen that way in any place else in the world. This is a project that was, the second picture here is, again, another beauty on the left. That's the before, called 155 Fifth Street. And some friends of ours owned this building. The tenant was Wells Fargo. They didn't know what to do with it when Wells's lease expired. So we said, well, let's look at it. And we did a joint venture, and we, again, we caught the wave. And the School of Dentistry, called the Degoni School, which is down on the Fillmore area, Pacific Heights, wanted to move downtown. Perfect building, huge floor plates, tall ceilings. So we sold them the shell with entitlements to build a new school, which they're doing. That happened last year. We ran into a foreclosure sale on this building, which, as you can see, there was nothing to do to the outside. This is the prototype of what made San Francisco the hot spot, brick and timber. That's the brick, and that's the timber. Not that catchy to make up a name. But these are the, and then we redid the lobby, and we redid a lot of the space, and we leased it out pretty quickly, sold it last year. This was, again, in the right part of town, the hottest product anybody wanted to see. This building, I was just talking to Steve about this. This building we actually bought a few years ago at 650 Townsend. It was originally intended to be a fashion showplace and kind of oddly designed, actually by John Portman, who did the Embarcadero Center. And we kind of came through the crunch. We were holding on. We decided we'd go get a tenant or two because it wasn't paying any rent. And we ran into a tenant that was expanding like mad, and they wanted first 175,000 feet. This is 650,000 feet, by the way. Then they wanted 200,000, then 250, then 350, then 400. And finally we said, no mas, if you want the building, you got to buy it. And so in mid last year, this company went public. I'm sure you all know Farmville, Zynga. And it became obvious that they were the likely buyer for it. As it turned out, they did. They bought it in a typical bidding situation. And at the day I think we closed, they had just raised $1 billion. They had a stock price of about 14, and today it's about 2. And you can read, as we did today, about the latest executive who has left. It's a company that's struggling to find itself. So I told Steve I awarded us the Timing of the Century Award because we built it, leased it, waited till they went public, managed to sell it to them, and then they cratered, which is really what all real estate is about. So for all you students that are here, pay attention. We blew up the lobby. This is a phenomenal redo. It's hard to read in a photograph, but they created this great space, and it's done really well. On the list of you gotta be kidding me's, we bought a building from the California Comp Insurance Company, State Comp Insurance, in October of 11. And it was a bid auction sale. It was a beat-up old building, but it was in the new place. For those of you who know San Francisco, Market Street between 6th and Van Ness is a sketchy, scary walk. And then Mayor Lee and Ron Conway and Doug Shorenstein put together a plan to bring tech tenants there at a project across the street from this. So that was the impetus for a new wave of development. So we saw this as an opportunity to be in the path of progress. It needed everything from seismic to new elevators, new systems, because CalComp hadn't taken care of it in probably 20 years. We thought we were going to do a lease with the city. The city couldn't quite respond, thank God. And on the 9th month of owning it, we closed the sale to Dolby Labs. Everybody knows Dolby. And they wanted it for their entire headquarters. They're going to do the retrofit, and they're right across from what is now one of the most successful projects in town, the 1 million square feet of Twitter Square, open, what's that thing called? Not Open Table, the other one that you get every morning, the wife. One Kings Lane, you knew. One Kings Lane, and so that part, there's 3 apartment projects under construction within 2 blocks of this. So in the world of real estate, I can't imagine any other place that has gone through a rebirth of the magnitude and short timing that this strip has done. For those of you who know what I call the pinnacle of San Francisco's degeneration, it's 6th and Market. If you walk from 6th and Market to Mission, you aren't probably going to get there. It's a bad stretch. And I've always assumed, because I'm a San Franciscan for the most part, that it's always going to be that way. You just can't fix certain things. And so, again, the mayor, going to show that politicians can make a difference. The mayor sort of set his mind on Market Street. He set his mind on 6th Street. They're opening up a new police substation on the corner in about 3 or 4 months. We did a project in Marin once, and police substations are really cool. They really can change a neighborhood. But so anyway, so not only is that street starting to come around, a venture capital firm from Sand Hill Road, you all know Sand Hill Road, $10 a foot, triple net, Benchmark has moved, they've opened up a satellite on the corner of 6th and Market at the old Warfield Theater office building. Now just close your mind and imagine that. So these are, VCs in the city on that corner. Now granted, they've opened up some great new burger joints, but it's a wild thought, and I don't think there's a situation where that could have happened almost anywhere else. So this island thing. And anyway, so these are the views from the building. The problem is nobody ever got into the building because nobody would walk there. So it's a whole transformation. We are also doing some apartment projects in the city. Again, Kathy Greenwald down here, who runs this stuff with me, I think we were looking for apartment loans in 2010. There was one lender, HUD. If you've ever gotten a HUD loan, you know the definition of eternity and torture. So we started the process. By the time we were about halfway through it, lenders started waking up and saying, oh, I forgot, I got to make loans to have income. So they started coming and saying, we like apartments. Everybody likes apartments. Does anybody not like apartments these days? So we like apartments, we'll lend you 50% of costs with recourse. We said, that's not so good. We don't like recourse. So, but within a few months, they were up to 65% non-recourse. It happened almost that fast. And then, like we did with the office building, one of our favorite apartment brokers said, I think we can do a pre-sale. He said, you're joking. We said, nope. So we had bids from all the REITs. REITs are a fabulous place to sell property. We had all the major REITs bid on this project, and so we have now accomplished the fact that we are pre-selling. We have pre-sold these 2. These are renderings, so they never look very good. But we pre-sold 2 of them to Essex, which is probably the most premier REIT around, and that all happened between 2010 and early part of 2012, that same time period. So this is just an unbelievable thing, as I said, that couldn't happen, I can't imagine anywhere else in the country. I think the last one is a completely different profile for us. Denise mentioned the project she's been running. This is it. The public markets over in Emeryville. We have owned this for, are you ready? 25 years. Not our MO. But we built it, we've owned it, we've refinanced it, we recapitalized it. We have a new equity partner 9-10 years ago. And in the world of retail, you know, everything's a curse and everything's a blessing. So we had Borders books, and of course Borders was a big anchor, and then one day they went bankrupt. But what that led to was the ability to redo the entire project. We put in Urban Outfitters and Guitar Center, and Denise is the queen of green. So we have every possible reuse of product on this building, including the project we're building on Mission Street. The wood from that building we tore down was so cool, we brought it over to Emeryville. So the point is, we just sold this last year, finally, because we got to the point where the returns were great and the timing was right. So I think, yeah, that's kind of it. So I think the point of this is that this is an economy that's been led by technology, economy recovery that's been led by technology, mostly in the Bay Area. And so the ripple effects of how that has spread around the Bay and then a little bit south and a little bit north and a little bit east, you get smatterings like that first chart of the Houstons or the Austins or the Seattles that also have stuff taken off. So we're in that phase where I think the secondary cities are starting to wake up. But there was a time and that this was it. You know, everybody said, well, there's San Francisco. They talk about the gateway cities. There's San Francisco, New York. Who else is a gateway? Chicago? No. DC, sorry. Yeah, DC. And there's a 3 or 4. And so what you end up with is everybody points there. So we're at that part of the cycle, Melinda knows, you know, the capital is out of control. You know, capital is all on the same jet flying out here. Every day somebody comes up with, you know, well, how do we do a deal off market? Right. That was 2 years ago. So the capital is excited. This Bay Area is crazy. And so, as I said, I think we all are fortunate that we've been here with that leading edge technology, that leading edge demand for people who want to live in San Francisco, get on that Google bus, you know, for an hour each way, and have that lifestyle. So that's kind of the gist of my talk. I was going to give you, I have more one-line tidbits than I can choke with, so I'll give you a few just to sort of wrap it up, and then we can open up the questions. The beauty of this business is no 2 cycles are the same. That's just it. There's no cycle that's ever gone down or recovered like the prior 2 or 3. So we call that the good news and the bad news. This cycle was the most amazing any of us have ever seen. It crashed on that fateful day in 2008, and it recovered sometime in 2011-12 with shorter betas. The cycle lines are steeper and they're shorter, so it's a different process we've gone through this time. We always say never cross, you may have to cross that bridge again. A lot of these deals that we picked up were with relationships where there'd been challenges, and you have to perform for your partner, your lender, your bank, whatever it is. And so those are the relationships that allow you to do some of these things in the off markets. Back to my other premise, bank guarantees are bad. Something I learned this time, equity partners can crash too. We had a surprising amount of our equity partners go in the toilet this time. I mean, big companies, people who, major pension fund advisor or pension funds stopped putting out money. They said, we don't care, we're going to lose that asset, but there's no more money. So that was kind of a surprise this time. I think the last couple are, there are no credit tenants. Don't ever confuse that don't ever think there are credit tenants. There aren't. There are too many situations of companies that have gone bankrupt that you would have said, Enron, really? That was one of the most darling companies in the world. Lehman Brothers, really? Go through the retail. No, there's no such thing. You got to analyze your deal, assuming there'll be another tenant, at some point down the road, and make that stick. And then my last one, this is my other new one, which is this business of development. we go through these cycles and we kind of look back fondly on parts of them and struggling with other parts of them. And I've come to the final conclusion, it's always hard. When there's great opportunities, there's no money. And when there's tons of money, and that makes it hard, by the way, and when there's tons of money, it's hard to find the good opportunities. So that makes it hard. So I've just kind of gotten over the fact this business never gets simple. But your job is to sort of, fortunately we are rooted in the right place. We're on the right island. This place has a energy and a Silicon Valley that are irreplaceable. And then you just got to try to, as I said, stick to these other rules, and someday you won't be broke, if you're lucky. So that's the end. I'm happy to open up to questions. I'm standing here between me and a drink, so you were warned. You might be able to ask questions.
Michael, back here. So how is this different from the internet boom of the early 2000s, and what kind of keeps you up at night, nightmares of what could go wrong, and what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, we all are believers of our own stories. So I had been pretty comfortable that this time was different. Everybody knows last time it was the 24-year-old who had gotten $7 million from some angel fund, and it was going to last through the middle of next year, and then you would say, well, how's your business plan work, and what happens when you run out of money? And the answer was, we'll get more. And obviously with the dot-coms, that didn't work so well, because once they all realized they weren't going public, the VCs pulled the cord, 90% of them went broke. So what happened this time around, and it lasted for a pretty good while, this was different. These were 40-year-olds starting these companies who had been through a couple. These were VCs and angels who said, no, you can't go from 20,000 feet to 100. Not going to happen. That's what they did last time. They said, oh my God, there won't be any space when we reach 7,000 employees, so let's go get 150,000 feet today, even though we only have 25. So they stopped doing that. Decent amount of capital. A lot of them weren't profitable yet, but they were highly qualified VCs. They were better tempered. They had experience, and they weren't doing the sort of goofball stuff of last time. A little bit of that has waned. There's a little bit of a flashback to some of that stuff. There are some of those guys out there, going from 40,000 to 120. There are people who, I still don't know how some of these companies are going to monetize. I guess it feels a little like the eyeball syndrome we had last time, where if you had a lot of eyeballs, it would eventually make money. I personally, now that I assume the Facebook guy is gone, right? I've done this before. I think the best thing that happened last year was when Facebook did the faceplant. When it came out at 32 and died the next day or whatever it was at 19 or 20, we took a breath over that and said, that's good. Because we were in that part of the phase where it was, oh God, here we go again. They have no revenue, no profit, and we'll value them at, everybody remember the number? $100 billion. That's from Austin Powers. $1 billion, 100 of them. And you said, that's just nuts. And so the next day, when it crashed, they were 50 billion. That still wasn't defensible in some senses, but it made everybody go, whoa, let's look at the companies. And a few that have gone public have been better. They had closer to profitability. Their stock went from 14 to 16, or 17. That all made sense. Now Facebook's back to 32. I don't know what that means, but I think it felt a little better. So we're a little more nervous than we were maybe 6-9 months ago, but those are sort of the characteristics that makes it a little different this time, I think. Cocktails? All right. I did that on time.
Great. Let's give Michael a round of applause, and thank you for your time. Thank you. Well, we appreciate you all being here today, our second annual symposium. Been great guests. Thank you to all the speakers, the organizing committee, As mentioned, the bar and food is just right through these doors, directly across this courtyard. You can see them setting up right now, so we invite you to do that. If you were on the planning committee, come forward for a minute. We'll take a quick picture, but enjoy the rest of the evening, and thanks again for being here.
Thank you.